Hello, and welcome to Vacation Station, hosted by Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazines.com.
When it comes to scenic drives and road trips, the Southwest will take you through ancient history and absolutely mind-blowing scenery. And we're excited to have adventure traveler, writer, photographer, anthropologist Rick-Quinn join us here on Big Blend Radio's Vacation Station Travel Show to talk about his beautiful new book. And when I say beautiful, I mean full-color beauty. It's called Road Trip America's Arizona and New Mexico 25 Scenic Side Trips, and it actually is #1 as a new release in the travel guide section on Amazon, so obviously you can get it there on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all those great places. And they've also got a really good website put together where you can read Rick's blog posts and get more information about the book. It is arizona-new-mexico-scenic-drives.com. Welcome, Road Tripper Rick. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
How many people call you Road Tripper Rick?
Not too many, but there's always a first time, right?
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about, this book is beautiful, as I was saying, and we'll talk about New Mexico and Arizona. You picked such a good portion of kind of going on the sides and center of them, of the states, and connecting them together. But getting out on the road and doing scenic drives and travel writing seems to be, something that you do quite frequently, photographing as well. What got you stuck in that travel bug mode? Is that something you did as a kid?
It started when I was young. Obviously, road trips with the family was the favorite vacation. Even back in the day, old Route 66 in the backseat of the DeSoto. When I was in college, I traveled really extensively. I went to a school that had this work-study program, so they had me going back and forth across the country every few months. As an anthropology student, I did field work in South America, and I actually lived down there for almost 5 years. And at one point, I shipped a four-wheel drive truck from the U.S. to Colombia. Drove all over the Andes for a couple of years. So that it really gave me the bug. It's like getting out there on the road and traveling is just one of my favorite things to do. All that kind of went on hold when I got married and had a family and a career and all that sort of thing. But when I retired 3 years ago, I really went nuts. I drove to Alaska and back. I drove all over Mexico. And then I got connected with Road Trip America, which is a really wonderful travel site for planning road trips, and got involved in this project to do a book about road trips in the Southwest.
Yeah, and I love that you covered Arizona and New Mexico. They're just, I think sometimes, I know you're born and raised, you are a zonie,
I am indeed, yes.
Yeah, and we're here in Tucson. I know you're up in Phoenix in the central portion. I just sometimes, I want more and more people to understand specifically these two states, because a lot of people think, even Texas, I want people to understand that it's not just, Death Valley, which I think is incredible, one of the most amazing places on the planet. But I feel like it's like they think we are a giant, bowl of sand in the desert of Texas. And your book proves wrong. It proves everyone wrong on that.
Yeah, the point to this was to get people off the interstates, because if all you've seen of Arizona and New Mexico is off to the side of Interstate 10 or Interstate 40, you're missing out on 99% of it.
I agree. And so before we even talk about some of these trips, naming a car is very important. And apparently you've got the Dirty Queen.
I do. Yeah, that's my Jeep Cherokee. Yeah, it got that name after a trip through Canyon de Chelly, back when it was still possible to drive your own vehicle in the canyon with a Navajo guide riding along with you. We went through some particularly deep mud, and there was this splash on the front of the hood that looked like a crown. And the Dirty Queen just kind of stuck. So La Reina Sucia is the name of my Jeep.
See, there you go. I like that. I like that. Yeah. And with these drives, planning this, it's interesting because you really went, okay, here's the main, here's the main vein of, travel. It's the big interstate, which Nancy and I are always trying to bail off of that as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And you've worked off of I-10, I-17, I-40, and then also I-25, and then did your routes around that. So it was like 4 main sections of it,
Right.
which is interesting. But how did you stop yourself from going to 100 scenic drives to get 45?
We had to kind of nail it down. There had to be some limits, and so working with the publisher, I came up with a proposal for the book. Then I came up with the routes, and I had to fit a format. We had to delimit it from the beginning. It was going to be 25 routes. So I had that to start with, and then each route was technically had to be drivable in a day. So those were my only limitations, and I started identifying all the places that I wanted to include and all the scenic roads that I wanted to include, and the pattern grew from those parameters. Where do you start? If it's going to be a drivable in a day, starting from where? They can't all be starting from the city. So I had to get creative in some cases, and it actually worked out really, really well.
I think it's interesting because you bring in the sites. You also educate folks about the desert, about handling wildlife, what happens if,
Yes.
and it's something to think about because we have interesting seasons out here, including monsoon storms, and we're hoping to get that now.
Yes,
now.
yes, we're all poised on the brink.
Yeah, it's come on. But there is something to being careful in regards to even driving through that. Nancy and I drove through a monsoon storm, and I told a friend of mine who had just flown in from Boston, and we were living up in Joshua Tree at that time, and we were driving to Las Vegas on these back roads through Nipton and all these, really, small little 1-lane road things. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying there, or 2-lane, I should say. And I'm like, there's going to be a huge storm. He's like, there's nothing in the sky telling you that. I'm like, there's going to be a storm. No. Take our time.
Mm-hmm.
Take our time. We get out there, and all of a sudden, boom. And I remember looking out, and it was like the ocean, the tide was coming in across the desert. You couldn't,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was the most incredible thing I've ever seen. And I've been through monsoon storms, but just on this road of actually, I don't know, it felt like Moses should be there.
Yeah. I have driven through storms like that myself, yes. So I know exactly what you're talking about. You can hardly see the hood of the car. It's coming down so hard.
Yeah, but we like it.
I know it was.
Yeah, we do
for sure.
I know. So that's something that we have to be aware of as drivers going through these terrains, and they change. So, the deserts change, like from the Sonoran to the, the Chihuahua Desert, and going to the Chiricahuas and all of that. It changes. So that's something I really enjoyed that you put tips in your book for people to just kind of have their head on their shoulders for when they go out driving.
Yes, I do put a lot of emphasis on safe travel, and these are family-friendly adventures. I don't want anybody getting stuck out there with their kids, that kind of thing, running into trouble. So I make recommendations about the kind of things you should carry in your car. And on some of the more remote routes, I'll give more specific advice about precautions that you should take. There are some roads that aren't paved, even to obvious attractions like Chaco Canyon in New Mexico. There's no way to get in there without traveling on an unpaved road. And in the rainy season, those roads can become very problematic, shall we say. So I give people phone numbers to call to check on road conditions and weather conditions and all that sort of thing.
So now I know that, national parks, we were all a fan of parks, and I got to touch on our area. You did some amazing routes, and I never thought of doing it. I've done portions, but I've never done a complete way of what you've done, and now we have to go back out. But I thought it was really interesting how it was like doing the Sonoran Desert, and how you tied, went from Wilcox down, all the way down to, Patagonia and Coronado National Memorial, and all the way up through here. And then you've got one that really does like the circle of Tucson, almost like the outskirts of it, and the two sides of Saguaro Park and Gates Pass. So you did such an amazing job on our side,
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
No, Tucson's always been one of my favorite places, and there was a lot of things I wanted to include, so it actually fit my format really well.
Mm.
You know, every route begins at an exit off the interstate and takes you back to the interstate at the end of the day.
Mm. And New Mexico too. Again, just a different route than I thought of. Yeah, I was like, I saw that you had the catwalk in there. Nancy and I love the catwalk.
Yeah.
And they've had
That's a really cool thing.
And interesting things happen over the years, and I'm glad to see it in your book and covered because it's just a very unique place. And so I thought, oh, he's going to go from there and do this. I'm like, nope, wrong. Turn the page. This is a different route. And you also did. I thought you would connect the two, that area, as you had Silver City. I thought, oh, he's going to go to the cliff dwellings, but that was a separate drive from there, and going through the Mimbres Mountains and the Trail of Mountain Spirits, isn't that?
Yes, that's a wonderful road.
Oh, yeah, I love that. It's such a beautiful, beautiful area. What do you have a favorite trail? I know.
Wow, you know, I get asked that pretty frequently,
Yeah.
and what I usually answer is the route that takes you through the Navajo Reservation up in the Four Corners, that goes through Canyon de Chelly and Monument Valley and over this unknown range of mountains called the Lucachucais, and then takes you to the backside of Shiprock and then down to Gallup. It's just such empty, beautiful countryside, and Canyon de Chelly is just such a marvel. It's the complete package. You've got the geology, extraordinary geology. You've got Navajo families still living down there with peach orchards and all that kind of thing, growing crops. You've got the cliff dwellings that are 1,000 years old. You've got petroglyphs that were put down there by nomadic hunters thousands of years ago, and then by the Anasazi, and then by the Hopi, and then by the Navajo. And all this stuff is in this one area, and it's just such a marvel. You have to get into the canyon to really appreciate it. And for that, you have to have a guide, but it's ever so worth it. And from there, I take you to Monument Valley, which everybody's seen in the movies, because John Ford made the place famous back with all those John Wayne movies that were shot in Monument Valley. It's kind of funny. It's one of the things that I mentioned in the book. It didn't matter where the plot was set. It could be Texas, it could be New Mexico, it could be Arizona, but the backdrop was always Monument Valley. So people around the world have this perception that that's what the West looks like, whereas that area is really only about 5 square miles or something like that.
It's funny because most of our friends, until we actually physically say, "You're coming, you're going with us," they really do think, "Why do you live in Tucson? Why do you live in the desert?" And that's the scene that they have in their mind.
Yeah. But if you go around, you'll see places with waterfalls.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
You know, it's like lakes and wild horses, and and then you get the cliff dwellings. I love the cliff dwellings. I have a thing about the cliff dwellings.
I want to live in one. I do.
They're a little drafty.
Yeah, but it's cool when you're like in the we were up there one day, and then we're like looking down, and we are seeing the tops of birds. And I like it.
Yeah. Cool. Isn't Route 66, because you cover that too, being up by Flagstaff area, and you got some of our favorite places in the book up in Seligman and
I love that place.
Yeah. But when you look at Route 66, it's very iconic. And it's getting, out there. I know we have a friend, Jim Hinckley. He's out there, pushing this. And I was just wondering about it. I think they're creating that into a national trail, a national historic trail with the Park Service. They're working on it.
I think that's, probably a really good idea.
I think so. I think it should have been. The other part on these historic trails that we have and routes, when you were doing the lower section off of 10, isn't parts of the side roads there part of Old Highway 80 that went from Georgia to San Diego, like way back when? Parts
of it, yeah. I don't get too heavily into that because very few of these routes follow a single road for any significant distance. It's a series of roads. So, I take people turn by turn. You'll take this highway for a while, and then you'll take this other highway, and then you'll take yet another highway by the time you get done. So there's only a few of them that are really predictable or tied to a specific route. The Route 66 side trip is one that does pretty specifically follow a single road, but that's a rarity.
That to me, I was just like, okay, because there's these old highways and these old trails, and going through your book, what's neat that you do change roads, frequently, is that people are getting this diverse scenery in one day, like in one drive, and you could do it in a day. And you're going like, even when you did the one, I think you went through Clifton and Morenci. Nancy's got the book in front of her. She stole it. And then all of a sudden you're in Safford. I was like, oh, I didn't even think of that. Going, it's just like, okay, that's interesting. And then all of a sudden you're kind of in the White Mountains area. So your terrain is changing, your landscape dramatically.
Yeah, and you'll probably notice that the end of one route is invariably the beginning of the next. So you can just kind of keep on going or not,
The road trip. You can build road trips totally. I
know.
know.
Yeah. I was just thinking this would make a great audio book.
Yeah.
So you could just talk people right on through.
That's right.
Sure. Yeah. Or I've thought of that as well. To somehow sync it up to the drive.
Yeah. And
that'd be cool.
But then we'd have to have music. So now, like at this portion of the road, you know what I mean? If you could have a complete audio guide, it's like, look to the left, you'll see this is a yucca. If it's this season, it's blooming. But now it's time for some road trip music. And you could match the music to where you go. We're big into road trip music. So I have to ask you, if you look at any of the road trips, is there any music that you have, like when you get off and start traveling around and doing your research out in Arizona and New Mexico?
Music that I particularly enjoy on the road?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I'm kind of old school. I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and I love old rock and roll. But for cruising through beautiful scenery, I really love classical music, particularly something like Vivaldi Four Seasons or Beethoven's Pastoral. I just love that kind of thing. When these sweeping views and sweeping curves and all that kind of thing, it's almost like it's choreographed.
Epic. It really is part. Well, Nancy, Nancy goes out in the desert areas. You know what she does? She plays the good, bad, and the ugly.
There you go.
It's like a whole different experience.
It changes the whole tone of things.
Yeah. So the other part, the nature, the scenery, this diversity and the diversity of the history too. I mean, to me, this is the other part. You've got the cowboys thing. You've got like Tombstone in there. You've got, mining towns. So did you get stuck into the history as you were traveling and like think, okay, I'm going to do like another book off of this because these stories are so cool?
Well, it was pretty darn cool. I did the drives first. I did some of the research before the drives, then I did the drives, and then I did the more intensive research afterwards. And I shot probably 7,000 photographs. And so those kind of, because they were all sequenced, it sort of led me along these various roads. And then I'd get into, okay, well, what's happened here in the history of the world that's particularly interesting? And I'd really dig deep. You can always find something interesting. I don't think there's any place that exists that hasn't had something happen that was interesting.
Like Jerome.
Right, exactly. It's an awesome place. I mean, there's some such cool stories about Jerome.
Jerome and Bisbee.
Yeah, they're just really different.
I want to do a trip from Jerome to Bisbee, or Bisbee to Jerome, since we're so close. There's just something, they have the same vibe to me for some reason.
Well, they're mining towns, from approximately the same era,
Yeah. The buckos. They're haunted.
That too, yeah.
And they have gargoyles. There's gargoyles. It's about that.
And they have interesting people that are living there today,
Yeah.
They attract an interesting crew.
Yes. Artists. A lot of art is happening too. That's the other thing.
A lot of creative people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's towns in New Mexico that have that same kind of attraction. Silver City is one. Taos, of course.
Yeah. That's the thing. I love to see this, how towns have changed, over the years. From mining, something had, then it was just about every town that was involved in mining. It was like it was thriving, and then boom, you're out. And then what happens? Like Nevada, most of them turned into ghost towns. And
literal ghost towns, yeah.
Yeah, and now here, if we look around what's happened with the mining towns and how they've changed, Silver City's one of them. It's interesting to me to see. I think a lot of artists go there.
Well, they do. The price of real estate drops, and it makes it affordable. That's an economic factor that's very real.
The other place that you went to that we haven't been to is the Biosphere.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, that's really close. You no excuses. You need to go check that out.
Yeah, there are no excuses to you have to, no matter what. I don't care. Like, everybody must move and go. Get on the road. And there's no excuse. Somehow, try and make it. And this is, here's the thing. Talk about no excuses. And if you look at, today's economy and things like that, this is one of the things that people can do as a family. I love that you bring that, because I think we've missed out on those Sunday drives. Put your phone down. Take a book, an actual book, so kids can help navigate.
Right.
Get them to learn how to use a map instead of GPS all the time. There's something really special about this. The only problem I have is I don't want to ruin the book, and I know as soon as it hits the car in the glove box, it's going to get used, and so we'll just have to get another one.
Well, there you go.
Only thing. But yeah, no excuses, because it's like if people did at least one drive a month, they'd be a happier family and getting into places that are unique. The Biosphere, what is that like? I mean, I heard it's like you've got like little science experiments on how to live in different ways, and
they're doing it belongs to the U of A now, and they're doing experiments on climate science, experiments into climate change and the terrestrial water cycle, that kind of thing. So they've taken what was originally this really space age thing and using it for very practical purposes at this stage.
This is cool.
The original experiment was a little bit of a failure, I guess you could say. They managed to stay sealed for 2 years in this 3.5-acre dome. But there were things that went on that compromised the integrity of the experiment, so they had to basically toss out the results. And when they tried to do it a second time, there was all kinds of personnel squabbles and stuff like that. As you can imagine, these people are sealed into this thing. Nothing comes in, nothing goes out. So there were issues. And so they brought in this guy to sort of take charge and get everything straightened out. Unbelievably, the guy that they brought in was Steve Bannon back in one of his earlier incarnations. And shortly after he got in there, the whole thing fell apart and the investors pulled the plug.
Don't say that's amazing. Don't say anything. This is interesting. Okay, so now,
no idea.
Speaking of unique things, now, did you see any aliens in Roswell? I had to ask.
We just talked about that.
I'm just saying,
Yes, I did, but they were made out of fiberglass, and they were in the little museum.
Yeah. Well, there's something, talk about no excuses. This is just down the road from us, Las Cruces, and we haven't really done that area at all, and we're like, we're going to be doing that very soon. So your book is going.
White Sands! You got to see White Sands at sunset. Oh my goodness!
I'm hoping that becomes a national park too. I know it's a national monument, but this is such a unique place. And then you've got the places with the green chilies, and you've got caves. I mean, that's the other thing. Look at the cave systems that we have out here. Neat,
Yeah, I talk about Carlsbad and Kartchner Caverns, and a little bit of the history of Kartchner Caverns, how it came to be. It's pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah, this whole area is just full of real surprises.
Yeah,
it really doesn't. From the highway, it looks like there's really no reason to get off. But once you get off,
all kinds of interesting stuff out there.
There's lots of strange things.
And what's interesting is when you look at the map of what you've covered, so you've basically got like the center of Arizona, from north to south, heading east, and then New Mexico to center, heading west from north to south. So it's this block that you have. And it's a big kind of clockwise circle that starts at the lower right. But how you've done it, what's interesting when you open this up in the book and you see it, and actually go to the website too, you see that your roots kind of go with the mountains. It's like it's interesting how that does, like how.
Those are I wanted this to be a good driving route. I mean, I love to drive. I love mountain roads. I mean, this is not going to be the ideal book for people that are terrified of mountain roads, because I seek them out. When I zoom in on a map and I see something that's really squiggly, I want to go there. I want to see what it looks like, because that's the most interesting terrain for the most part.
Yeah, and that's the thing to me. It's like, and you've got all seasons here. You could be going a route, and next thing you know, you're snow skiing. It
could happen, yeah. And I have warnings about that too. There's some places that are better in one season than another.
And you can see the fall colors. That's the thing too. I know we're sitting here in the middle of summer and waiting for our monsoon rain, but the fall and spring, winter. I mean, it's amazing time to drive around the Southwest. I love all seasons in the Southwest. All
Absolutely, yeah, and it so much varies with altitude. I talk a little bit about the Sky Islands as well.
Oh.
All the changes in climate zones just in the space of a short drive.
And when you went out and was photographing and everything, did you find yourself taking any hiking trails or getting on nature trails and that kind of thing?
To some extent, I'm an older guy, so I don't do that as much as I used to. But yeah, sure, I love to get out there and walk around. Absolutely.
Okay, so now road trip. You've got your music. If you could take anybody on one of your drives, anyone who's live or pass on, that you want to spend a day on a drive with, maybe getting their information out of their mind or just, having fun, whatever kind of conversation. We want to know who is going in the car with you and what drive, and we want to know what gossip is going on in the car.
I wouldn't mind taking Jack Kerouac out for a spin.
That's awesome.
Cool. Right on. I like that.
Yeah.
And where are you going to go? Which drive?
Probably Route 66, and I'd do the little detour down to the Colorado River with him. That's one thing that we didn't talk about that, but on my section of Route 66, I take people down through the Wallapai Reservation. There's a road that actually goes down to the Colorado River inside the Grand Canyon. It follows one of the creeks. So it's pretty bumpy, but you can do it.
You know what we're doing? We're doing. I'm in for that. So what are you gonna talk to him about? Do you have questions for him?
Oh, what it was like for him. I mean, because it was a whole different world back in the 40s and 50s.
Yeah, that would be that's the first no one's done Jack Kerouac. That's awesome. I was just for some reason thinking of Aldo Leopold. I just maybe it's just the New Mexico thing and the
It'd be a good one too. Oh, absolutely, yeah.
I'd love him to see. I don't know. He might be really bummed.
Yeah,
it might be at that. Yeah.
And Bandolier. Could you imagine taking?
Oh man, yeah.
I can't wait to get up there. We haven't been there yet. And
it's wonderful. Wonderful place.
And I'm glad you covered Chaco because that's on our list. We have to go out there. We work with the National Parks Arts Foundation, so authors and artists and writers go and stay in a park for a month. And Chaco and Aztec Ruins are both on that list, and we interview artists when they're there a lot of times. And they're there for that full month, living on the land and creating. And Chaco is such a fascinating one because they get a lot of artists that are there for the dark skies in October. Of the observatory and doing all the photography and it's interesting. It's just so cool to go and page through your book and just go we need to go here and things your bucket list. It's in your face to go.
And I provide just enough information to pique your interest, without going too extensively into all the details.
So what's your next book?
Well, hard to say. I've got a lot of personal projects that I'm working on right now. There's obviously a lot of pressure to continue this series. If there was going to be another one, it would probably be Colorado and Utah. Ultimately, there's going to be 10 books in the Scenic Side Trip series. So we're seeking writers to work on the project with us. The publisher is real gung-ho about getting this out there. It's been very well received so far.
You know what I think is beautiful, and I think the way you wrote it off of the main thoroughfares of the interstate, it gives people okay, I can do this. If they fly in to Tucson, Phoenix, any major, airport, Albuquerque, they just rent a car and you've got something you can do immediately. That's going to take
absolutely, yes. They're wonderful day trips, and it's also a pretty good deal for folks that are driving cross country and they got a few extra hours, let's say. They're traveling coast to coast or whatever they might be doing. Just with even a few extra hours, you can do one of these things instead of just following the trucks.
Yeah, you get off the interstate. I'm telling you, it's way more fun. There's this, I don't know. You start to see things, and you start to see the plants, and everything comes to life, and you slow down, and so
you can stop. On the interstate, you can't even stop. You're looking for an exit, and then what? A gas station. It's like out there on the side roads, any place you see a wide spot, you can pull over and you can stop.
I know. Yeah. This is so cool. And also it's good to see the smaller communities. And when you're on the interstate, it's like, here, pull into the big gas tank McDonald's thing, where
Right.
you get off, get off the interstate and support those communities and go into the little towns, and it's really
Absolutely.
start to see,
Absolutely. You'll see the real America, because that's what's
yeah,
out there.
before it goes away, and
Exactly,
it's out
because it's, yeah.
There's some interesting little towns
Mhm.
with very, very interesting people.
I want to go back to Hackberry in that area
Yeah.
because they have prairie dogs too. That's the thing, everything changes. If you could go from here to there in one day, and it's like suddenly you're going from little gophers, desert gopher rats, to prairie dogs. It's like, how did that happen? But it's so cool.
Yeah.
But I think for kids, I like it because I think it's one of the ways to get kids interested in history is for them to go to the places where things happened.
Exactly. It puts it all in context. It's like it's not just dry words on a page.
Exactly. But this is a good guide for everybody to get off and exploring, and I think the books like yours. There's a book when we lived in South Africa that Nancy and I, we were on the road for about 2 years.
Yeah,
something like
it was
that.
supposed to be 1 year, and we just kept going.
Yeah, she was doing a painting tour with her artwork, and she took me out of school and homeschooled me on the road, and the road homeschooled me. And it was interesting. But we had this book that suddenly became like the Bible, and it was like, but I mean, it's big. Like, I'm glad you're doing yours your size, that I can fit in a glove box.
Yeah, it's off the beaten track.
But it's like a big coffee table book of the entire country, and it took us on all these little roads and things. And I think a lot of times people go, well, we don't know what's down that road, so they won't explore. And sometimes you do go down those roads and you end up in a terrorist camp. Not that we ever done
it
that
could happen,
before.
right? Yeah.
It's happened. It's happened. You know about your travels, how things like that can happen. So when someone's given you, here's some basics to really have a good time, I think it's invaluable. It saves people time, saves them money, it saves them everything, and gets them out.
Sure, I did the hard part. I did all the research.
Yeah.
That's cool. There is one tip I could say, especially in parts of Africa, you should know how to reverse your car as fast as you can go forward.
Oh man, I don't think you need that out here. Oh, but that's, what? Let me, the fear factor that's out there. You talk about going and traveling the border areas, and I know a lot of people, it's hurt tourism, about what's, the amount of border patrol or lack of it. And I don't want to get in a political debate on it, but what it is really the people are scared to go near the border. I mean,
too much negative publicity, and there is some foundation to that. It has been dangerous, but it's primarily people involved in things that they shouldn't be involved in, getting gunned down by their associates. That's what's happening. Yeah. I drove through Mexico for 8,000 miles a couple of years back, and we crossed the border at Laredo and went all the way down to the Guatemalan border and all over the Yucatan. So we got a pretty good insight into the border area because we had to travel through the whole thing. It's very heavily patrolled. I mean, there's some common sense precautions and some that aren't necessarily obvious, but most of the primary highways in Mexico these days are toll roads. In fact, just about all of them are. The good federal highways are toll roads. You don't get off of the toll roads, you stay on them because those are the roads that are patrolled, and they're the roads where you're less likely to get into a problem. And they are very heavily patrolled. There's checkpoints all over the place. There's Army patrols all over the place. And they're there to make you safe. I mean, you don't look at them as being a threat. They're actually there to protect travelers. So it's a little bit, it can be a little intimidating, be surrounded by a gang of guys in SWAT gear, and they're demanding your papers and all that. But once you get past that part of it, it's really not so bad. And once you get into the interior, it's as nice as it ever was.
We lived in Ensenada, south of Ensenada for a while. And we used to go up and down in the main road from San Diego down. And there was, the toll roads and everything. But there was also, and I don't know if that's the same for when you were traveling down there and going way far. I mean, way further than what we were doing. But there, like if you got in, your car was in trouble or something like that, you kept your little ticket when you went through the toll road, and they would come, and with the Green Angels, I think they were called.
Yeah, the Green Angels. Yes, what a wonderful idea that is. Yeah.
Yeah, they came and helped you, and so they gave you that, like, okay, it's not so bad, and it, I don't know. I'm kind of used to, I think both of us, from living in different countries, that you get used to the uniform thing. It is intimidating, and you just breathe and be normal because they're really people, and they are there to protect you. And I think people get nervous about the Border Patrol here in southern Arizona. And
like they feel intimidated by it. Like, they make you feel like you've done something wrong.
Only if you have.
Yeah, exactly.
There's plenty of me.
Yeah. It's like, don't take your weed out there, okay? This is a family trip, not one of those. Don't do that. Don't be doing any of that stuff. But we go down there quite frequently, and we go out in the bush, and yes, sometimes you do see to go hiking and stuff in some of the areas, and so sometimes you see clothing and things like that. But
sure, discarded water bottles a lot, that kind of thing.
Yeah, let people know. We always hang out with park rangers, so they know that we're off traipsing around somewhere. But it is about being aware, but don't ignore the border towns, because they are some of the funkiest, most coolest border towns. Like Patagonia, you covered Patagonia. Isn't that just like a funky? I feel like it's from Northern Exposure, even though we're in southern.
It's a wonderful little town. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. A lot of good places.
And I do talk about crossing the border, some of the precautions and how to do that. Agua Prieta and Nogales.
It's just always good to make sure you have all your paperwork. Yeah. Because that's
all that, and it's probably best to leave your car on the American side.
Yeah. And I color photocopy of your passport, so that I actually got back into the country with a photocopy once. I don't know if it would ever work again, but I did. And why I didn't have my passport with me, don't ask me. That's like one of those, slap your wrist things. That's like, you got to take your passport wherever you go. If you go in the border area, just take your passport. I always believe everybody should have a passport. Yeah. You never know when the itch may, just cross the border, man.
Or you might get lost and cross the border by mistake.
That can happen.
We know not real likely, but it could happen.
It could. You never know. You never know. Oh, well, Road Tripper Rick. It's either going to be Ranger Rick or Road Tripper Rick, and definitely you're a road tripper. Thank you so much for joining us and for such an awesome book. Definitely going to be used here, and it's going to get torn pages. I know it's going to happen. But sorry in advance. But that means
we'll get you another copy when you need one. In fact, we're just about to go into a second printing.
Are you really? How cool.
Really? Yeah.
Oh, awesome. That's all. Congratulations. It just shows how popular the Southwest is, and what a beautiful book you've put together, and looking forward to more, and also following your stories on the website. Again, is arizona-new-mexico-scenic-drives.com. Go check it out. Again, the book by Rick-Quinn is out now. You can go and get it. And I'm going to give you the title again because, hey, and Road Trip America's, great website as well. It's Road Trip America's Arizona and New Mexico 25 Scenic Side Trips. So it's out on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all those great places.
And again, support your local bookstores when you got one. Absolutely, especially the independents. I had a book signing at Mostly Books down in Tucson back in April.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, did you go to the book expo?
No, I did not. Missed that one, but next year for sure.
Oh, cool. And absolutely on the bookstores. Absolutely. Go support them. They're few and far between, but we do have them, and go to them. Go
absolutely,
them.
Yes.
Yeah. Any mom and pop retail shops. Just saying. We need to
absolutely
go take a scenic drive, go hang out in the downtown, and go see some real things that don't have to be buzzed to your door. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Thank you for listening to Big Blend Radio. It airs Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and Fridays and Sundays from 11 a.m. Pacific Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. The schedule's up on bigblendradio.com. You can listen as shows go live or anytime on demand. And we always like to close with some music. And Rick, your song today is called Sunset Steps. And it is actually it's written by Domingo de Grazia. He is the son of Ted de Grazia, a famous Arizona artist. And Arizona Highways and him had a really amazing relationship. He really helped put Arizona on the map, and it helped him and his art. And I had to pick this because, hey, we're here in Tucson. But this is music that is on an album called Please Remember Me. They found his manuscripts, his musical manuscripts of Ted de Grazia's, and got together and recreated his music. And Domingo worked with them as, because he's an incredible guitarist. And so this is Sunset Steps off of the album, and that just kind of feels like the Southwest. So everyone, the album, you can get it at degrazia.org. And if you come to Tucson, stop by De Grazia Gallery in the Sun. It's one of the most interesting places you'll ever go. Yeah. It's definitely interesting. I don't know if you've been here to see De Grazia's. Rick, have you been?
No, I haven't, but it sounds like a good thing to do. We recently got an order from Saguaro National Park for the book, and I plan to go down there and say hello and offer to sign their copies for them. Yeah.
Oh,
it's a great thing to get into the National Park bookstores. It's not so easy to do.
Yeah, no, I was going to say congratulations, and that's something we talk about bookshops. It's one of the places you can go and get books. Actually, we went. Some of our national park books come directly from the Saguaro National Park Bookshop, and that is awesome. Congratulations, and that also isn't that done through the Western Parks Association? And,
yes, it is. Yes, it is.
They help fund the national parks. They're like a fundraising arm, so it's such a good organization to be part of. So congrats on that. And here it is, everyone, Sunset Steps. And next time you come to Tucson, go to De Grazia Gallery in the Sun. You'll trip out. I'm telling you, it's one of the coolest places on the planet, and it ties into one of your road trips. In Tucson,
I'll do that.
And it ties into your mining camp of Morenci, because that's where Ted de Grazia was born.
Excellent.
Yeah. All right, here it is, everyone, Sunset Steps. Thanks, Rick.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.